All right, well, welcome everyone to the Traditional Ecological Knowledge, Science and Management webinar series. And we're really excited today that we're going to be joined by Meredith Knight and Margo Robbins. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves in a minute. But first I have a couple announcements, and please excuse my child is taking the class with us today. And I guess he thought it'd be funny to Zoom. That's what this is all about our kids learning about these things. And Malcolm is actually a really great burner, and he helps with a lot of fire projects locally in the Orleans community. So it's good that he's here today. So I do have a couple announcements. We wanted to announce that we do have internships available for youth, and we also have internships available in general. So we are hoping that people can go to our website and check that out. It's under employment on californiasalmon.org. Also, we wanted to announce that this year on this series, we are well, first of all, sorry, I'm off because of my kid. Hold on. First of all, I'm coming to you today from Karuk land, and it's really important that we understand that Karuk people have been burning since time immemorial, have actively been managing this landscape in a way that's really good for the forest, good for the fish, and good for the environment. And so I thank the Karuk people for letting me be here today on their land and for doing such an amazing job with stewarding the local ecosystem. Also, we wanted to announce here we're dealing with really bad salmon returns. It's going to be one of the worst years for both salmon returns and for water availability in the Klamath River that have happened so far. And obviously this climate change is involved. But the same is true on the Sacramento and Bay Delta systems. We're dealing with drought and low salmon returns. So there are going to have to be some hard decisions made by both the governor and federal government on whether or not to let the salmon die in these river systems this year or to provide water for them. So we have a day, we are calling for people to go to a water board meeting on whether or not to release water for the Sacramento salmon on April 21st. And we also have a petition up at change.org, and that's change.org/water justice. All these action alerts are on our social media pages and on californiasalmon.org. Also, our curriculum, our advocacy and water protection in Native California curriculum with Bolt State University's Native American Studies is on our website, and they are also co-hosting this webinar series. So we thank them for their partnership, and there will be some teacher trainings happening this summer on how to teach these kind of issues. And so we thank all the teachers that are here today and everyone who's making sure traditional ecological knowledge and native science is being taught in the school systems, because it is extremely important. So with that said, we encourage everyone to get involved, and we would like to introduce our panelists, which we're so excited to have here today. And because I'm kind of late getting here, I'm going themselves. Unfortunately, my kid's school schedule changed last minute, so he is here with us today, and he is a wonderful person, so that's great, but I'm a little less prepared than I wish I was. So we're going to start today, though, with Margo Robbins, because we're going to keep it local, and then we're going to go over to talk about her and her area. So Margo, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Wakla, Regina. Ayukui, Neknau Margo Robbins, Keechnek, a Yurok tribal member, Indian Education Director for the Klamath Trinity Joint Unified School District, the Executive Director for the Cultural Fire Management Council, and most important of all, a mom and a grandma. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have a PowerPoint to share with you. So when we talk about traditional ecological knowledge, sorry, this picture is a little pixelated. We're talking about our homelands and the knowledge we have that comes from thousands of generations of the people before us. Oh, my slideshow seems to have a mind of its own. So we're talking about the knowledge that comes from thousands of generations that come before us, who have passed that knowledge down through the years. Despite all of our tragic history, we have culture bearers that have held on to that knowledge and taught it to those who are here now. And it's our job to teach it to the next generations of people. Traditional ecological knowledge is a place-based knowledge. Unlike many tribes, the Yurok people have never been forced off of our land. We have occupied this land since the beginning of time. Before we were here, there was a race of pre-human spirit beings that created the world as we know it. And they taught us how to live in this place in a way that would keep physical and spiritual balance. And that as humans who came to this place after those Wage spirit beings made it the way it is, we learned from them how to keep things in balance. And fire is one of the main tools that was given to us to maintain that balance. Now my slide won't go forward. Here we go. So traditionally, Native people in this area and many other areas as well used fire to ensure a constant supply of food sources. So you'll see in this picture numerous food sources that keep us as Native people healthy in this land. In the center, you'll see a big buck. Boy, would my sons love to see that out on the prairie. And they need to have a certain habitat in order to live and thrive. And fire helps keep that habitat healthy. They will eat acorns just as humans eat acorns. You'll see on the right-hand side, my cute little grandson sitting in baskets of acorns that we gathered from the tan oak trees. And if we don't burn under the tan oak trees, they will become infested with weevils. And so it's important to use fire to keep the food sources healthy, that they're free of pests, that they have good habitat to live in. Underneath the acorns, we see huckleberries, which often will be growing under the tan oak trees. But if the tan oak trees grow too close together, it will close the canopy and no sun will reach the berries and the berries will stop producing. So they not only need to have sun, they need to get some water, and they need a partially open canopy. They also need to be picked. It's just like if you have a garden where you plant tomatoes, if you don't pick the tomatoes, it stops producing. Well, the food in our forest garden is the same way. If we don't pick it, or if animals aren't able to get in there and eat it, it stops producing. You'll see up on the top left a young man pulling a salmon out of his net. And you might think, well, what does that have to do with fire? But fire and water have a very intimate connection. They are pure water, and the quantity of water depends on putting fire on the land. So fire has been excluded from the land for well over 100 years. We see our rivers suffering. There's not enough water. The creeks are drying up. And part of that has to do with the fire exclusion from the land. Our land is just thick with brush, sucking up all the water. When we burn and we clear the land of that brush and the trees are left unharmed, then there is more water to reach the creeks that then reach the river. Another thing that fire does for water is that it purifies it. So if you stop and you think about what's in a water purifier, it's charcoal. So when we are burning mountainsides, we are leaving charcoal on the ground. It makes the soil more healthy and it purifies the water. Another important cultural resource is medicine plants, and fire also improves the quality of the medicine plants. Not only does it improve the quality, but it enables us to get in there where they're at so we can pick them. If we exclude fire from the forest, you can't walk through the forest. You can't see through the brush. And not only can we as humans not do that, but neither can the bigger animals. And so these here are some medicine plants that grow locally. You'll see on the right-hand side, the madrone tree. It's good for diabetes. Also, you'll see that round kind of orb by the tree. And I thought there was something wrong with the picture. And so I tried another picture that I had taken, and it too had the same orb. And I think that perhaps it is the spirit of that tree. Our spirits as humans from our homelands, we are connected to the things that live and grow on our homelands. And those spirit beings taught us what plants were good for medicine, what plants are good for food, what plants we would use to make our baskets. Some of our basket materials are fire dependent. You'll see in the center, beginning of a basket, and all those sticks coming out like a rays of sunshine, those come from single stems that come up after the hazel has been burned. If you don't burn it, it turns into bushes with a bunch of limbs, and we can't use that for weaving. We need to have these straight stems, and they're held together with roots and then covered with different kinds of color. You'll see on the right-hand side, it's called an Ecological. There's not really an English name for it, but we use this basket to lift up prayer. And that white on the basket, it's bear grass, and it also must be burned in order to render it useful for basket weaving. The black is maidenhair fern, which grows in the damp places. And again, we see the damp places where these ferns would naturally grow, they're starting to dry up, and they need to have more water in order to live. But we see the places where we have burned, that those damp places, they're becoming creeks again. We use baskets for so many things, from the time our babies are small, clear up until the time we pass on to the other realm of existence, and we feed that person's spirit on a small basket plate. We use baskets to catch eels, baskets to cook, baskets to eat with. This is a controlled burn that we did down in Yurok territory, and you can see that the fire is small. It's just walking its way through the forest, and that's because we start the fire at the top of the hill and it slowly backs its way down. In the foreground, you can see the hazel with all of its limbs, and once this fire comes through in the spring, the following spring we'll have basket materials again to gather and make baskets. In this picture here again, you can see that iridescent globe in the picture, and there was no water out there. This is a warm middle of the day, and nobody was squirting water on this small fire. And once again, I believe that this is one of the spirit beings of the land. Traditionally, families burned their own hunting and gathering places and around their villages, and we are trying to reinstate that traditional practice. Let's see if I can get back to that picture. Sorry, folks. It's just doing what it wants to do. So anyway, the first picture that you saw is 3 generations of fire lighters. And we are teaching our children about fire, what it's good for, why it's important, and how to use it. And so we have in that picture, we have mamas carrying their babies in their carry packs. We have two-year-old help learning how to light. They have torches, wormwood torches, which was one of the traditional ways to carry fire. We teach them to start the fire at the top to keep it under control. And that particular burn was to stop briars from encroaching on a prairie. Another way that we do burning is cooperative burns. And so with cooperative burns, it's the Cultural Fire Management Council working with the Yurok tribe and to do home protection units. The picture, which we can't see because it just went right through it, was an elder's home, and we burned down behind the place, starting from the top and coming down. And we have fire engines on site. And for those kinds of burns, the people that are burning are they're qualified firefighters. And so we have engines and hose lays, and they're smaller size burns, like less than 10 acres. Another way that we do cultural burning, and when I say cultural burning, it is not done in a traditional way, but it's for cultural purposes. And so we choose places that are rich in natural resources. You know, maybe there's a lot of hazel there. Maybe it's a place that deer would be good habitat for deer. Maybe there's a lot of medicine plants and teas there, or we're restoring prairie lands so that the elk will come home. There used to be a lot of elk on the Yurok reservation, and now there are not any. Well, actually, somebody saw 1 or 2. They're starting to come back as we do more and more burning. And so another way that we will do large scale burns is with a model called TREX. It's a training for firefighters. And they come from all across the United States to come learn how to do prescribed burns or controlled burns, and learn about why it's important to do controlled burns, to put fire on the land, that it's a critical part of the ecosystem. And while they're here, we teach them about our culture and why it's important for them to come and learn about that, because our culture depends on putting fire on the land. You'll see here in this picture, my sister in fire, Elizabeth Azuz, and we are getting ready to burn a prairie. And she is starting the first fire with a wormwood torch and sending up prayer so that everything will be done in a good way. And then you'll see in the middle part, the tool that we use to continue carrying the fire, and that is the drip torch. And so fire is a natural part of the ecosystem. We have used it for thousands and thousands of years. The pre-human race of spirit beings that made the world as we know it actually stole the fire from the sky people and gave it to us as humans, because they knew we would need it, not only to stay warm and to cook our food, but also to keep the land in balance. Traditional ecological knowledge in regards to fire has to do with knowing the land, knowing how the winds blow over the land, knowing when the weather is going to change, knowing when a place needs to be burned, because you don't burn every place every year. Some places you have a reentry cycle of 3 to 5 years for hazel. For tan oaks, you might wait 8 to 10 years. But all of those cycles have been thrown off. And as we reclaim those traditional fire practices, we have to alter them some because of climate change and because there's been no fire on the land for so very long. So in wrapping up, I just want to say that fire should belong to the people. It should not be held strictly in the hands of government agencies, that everybody should have the right to burn and to take upon themselves the responsibility to learn how to use fire responsibly, safely, to learn what the benefits are and to learn how to apply it in a good way on the lands that they occupy. Because the truth of the matter is that Native people no longer own all the land. We share this land with non-Native people. And so we share this burden with other non-Native people to take care of the land. Fire is a necessary part of the ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Allie. Please introduce yourself in any other way you feel like that I did not get to. Thank you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Regina. I've known you for a long time. My name is Allie Metters Knight. So it's not Murders Night, it's Metters.
I'm so sorry. I have my kid being crazy behind me, so I really apologize to everyone for not having it very
No, it's okay. My name is Allie Metters Knight, and I am a Mechoopda tribal member, Hetunani. I'm in my ancestral territory here in Chico, California, also called Occupied Mechoopda Territory. And our community, our tribal community, is also one of the few tribal communities in California that are also on our ancestral lands and have not left. Part of our tribes were removed in 1860 to Round Valley, but a majority of us were able to stay working with and on the Bidwell Mansion. And so we have quite a long history here. One of the things that was really remarkable is the Arrowhead Medicine Company that was developed and brought in this area by the Conways, Isaiah Conway. So this is traditional medicine and land management that took place in the 1900s. And some of that knowledge was, of course, discovered and documented by ethnographers from Berkeley to, of course, Chico State, where this was archived. And I was able to go through that information as well as work with other tribal elders to kind of put together what I've been doing today. I started 20 years ago teaching children in my tribe and other children in the community about watershed and land management through a simple just through simple curriculums and outdoor education programs. But it's been 20 years. And so I've developed some partnerships and collaborations that do more. So let's look at, we're going to go into my screen share. We're going to go into the presentation that I have. And so this is my presentation, Traditional Ecological Knowledge. Now we want to go into, my first slide is kind of what I go with children, local folks. When we get into the next slide, this one? Mm-hmm. Native California. So when you look at California's landscape, and you can see right here, we have the Mechoopda tribe is under and within the Kankau Maidu and territory and boundaries, but we are Mechoopda here in Chico, California. These boundaries were generally basically based on watersheds and creeks and boundaries that were established before colonization. Right now, there are currently 195 federally recognized tribes in the state of California and 53 that are state recognized, but not federally recognized. The reason why that's important is to kind of look at what I look at when I look at the state of California. I don't look at county boundaries. I look at those territorial boundaries to exist as I look at TEK, place-based knowledge. So when I'm going into the science of TEK here, when I kind of teach this and kind of work with even local politicians in my tribal community, I'm kind of getting this on management that's place-based. So when we're in our tribal territory, we have the right in our tribal community and our tribal law to make into law what our keystone species are. So keystone species are plants and animals that play crucial roles in maintaining our ecosystems. For instance, we have many ecosystems here in our traditional territory. We are not near the ocean, but we have a lot of watersheds. So we have the Sacramento River, we have creeks, but we also have different types of riparian that go into wetlands, and we also have grasslands and different kind of woodlands. So we have quite a mix of ecosystems within our territory. And these ecosystems all have different regimens of management. And we have not been able to manage our traditional ecological territory for years because we are really in an urban situation. So we are in Chico, California has about 250,000 people, and we make up less than 1% of the population as a tribal community. And so we are majority non-native all around us, and they own and manage a majority of the property. So I'm in quite a pickle to teach and try to educate this community to move forward. And so this is knowledge and practice. So I've been doing that in different ways. So let's see the next slide. So this is what I tend to teach. These are the keystone species. So we talk about mugwort. We call that munmuni. So we go into our riparian and we talk about our munmuni, our plant, our most valuable, probably the top keystone species that we use. And it's also used to begin a lot of burns. It's a prayer medicine. Then we have loe. Now, loe is the valley oak, and that's one of our very important oak trees that we have in the valley. We also have thorny, which is our gray pine. They have our pine nuts, and we have them in a little bit higher elevation outside of our riparian, but they're extremely important to us because they're just a bunch of protein packed in a little wood box or a little wooden seed. Chakawe is our blue oak. Chakawe and thorny are best friends, and Chakawe and thorny exist together. So you're never going to see a gray pine without seeing a blue oak. So they're really important, and they sit at a certain elevation. So when you see a thorny and you see a Chakawe, you should know what elevation you're at. And then lily. This is what do you call it? Lily. This is redbud, and this is one of our favorite basket materials. So we use this. Redbud is really great because you can split it. It's got white on one side and red on the other, and you can flip it around and kind of mix up your patterns on your basket. So this is cultural burning. This is me out at our tribal property. As you can see, I'm not really dressed up in a lot of tech gear. And this is something typical of cultural burning. I'm with the tribal members, and this is a real easy grass burn. We're in grasslands right outside of riparian area. Obviously, we don't have a lot of canopy. So what we're doing is doing two things. We're burning for star thistle. So I'm trying to create these breaks to get control the star thistle. And then we're also planting oaks and trying to create also canopy. Star thistle there's like two approaches. You got to hit it with shade and hit it with fire. So we're doing both. That's me. That's after the burn. Probably no smoke, really no wind that day. As you can see, that steam is just pulling up. It was a perfect day to burn. There wasn't a lot of fuel, so whenever it hit, it burned, it's gone. And we got a lot of deer grass, but real calm, real nice, and real easy day. Nice work on that day. And I wanted to talk about, I wanted to show some examples. This is not my burn, but this cycle is really important to understanding what it looks like for a fire regime and a regimen. And so when we first look at this cycle, we'll kind of go through it. This is what pretty much what a landscape does when it's responding to a place that's been managed with fire. So when you look at this guy, it starts before the fire, about 8 feet, maybe 7 feet. This is the burn, right after the burn. And then a little bit later after the burn. And then now it's growing back. And now you got your ferns. Now you see this really, I love that cycle because look at that. That's beautiful. That's the change. So we'll go to the next slide. Oops, wrong way. There you go. So this is my painting. I like to use paint sometimes. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. I like to use paint sometimes to to demonstrate what I'm trying to teach for fire, because sometimes because of permitting and because of things that happen, I really can't do what I need to on the landscape, so I'll paint it. So this typically is what people think California landscape should look like. But over there is you're going to see a lot of timber over here, and then maybe some California oak and some grasslands and some areas over here. And it's really overseeded. You're going to have a lot of star thistle. There's a lot of the creek bed in there is all dried up and it's full of, you know, blackberries and some bad stuff. So let's look at what happens when a fire hits. So it scorches, it puts a moonscape on that that timber side, just doesn't handle fire very well. It's not fire adapted. Those plants haven't been here for thousands of years and they're not fire adapted. And so they can't handle it and they go up. Now the other side, because you have some fire adapted plants, some California native oaks, the fire does a little bit different. And you see those nice thin plumes of smoke, that's good. And there's a good example too, how fire makes smoke. And what does that smoke make? That smoke makes clouds, that makes rain. Now here's what it looks like afterward. Now, if you were to come look at a fire afterward, now we got water. Why? Because we made smoke, that smoke made clouds, and we got some water coming in. And now we got this nice area. We got recovery with bushes coming over on the side that was a moonscape. And then we have all these native flowers and this nice biodiversity just popping over here on this side that's had the fire with the native plants and the native trees. So this is just a really good, for me, example of how to feel good about fire on the land and seeing before, middle, and after. Now, I'm looking at a project. I want to talk to you about fire in this area because I live in a lot, like I said, 1% native and a lot of folks that don't know much about TEK or land management and are really spooked out about fire because of the campfire that happened in Paradise, which is also our tribal territory. So here is Verbena Fields. It's a 12-year park that I've been working with for a while. And today a bunch of folks are out there right there. The first line you'll see up there, the Rio Lindo, or also called Sandy Gulch, it's dried up. It's dried up most of the year. White folks are really been making sure that area is just a floodplain because they're really scared of all the water that comes into the Sacramento. But about 100 years ago, this was a lightweight weir that went through the middle of town from the Sacramento River. Now it's just a floodplain, like a flood to keep from flooding the town. Now this is a restoration area. That's all willow cut back through there, and we've had to do a lot of biomimicry of beaver because we really don't have a way of managing it. They really don't want fire in the middle of the city. But as of 2 days ago, we got that approved, and we will be doing what we call micro burning. So that's me doing deer grass micro burn. And what I basically do is do a little trench around these deer grass and we light them on fire. And we also do some with fire and without fire so that they have basically a test study. So we have some deer grass that we don't burn and we show them this is what unmanaged deer grass looks like. And we hate to let these folks suffer, but we really need to show an example because we're really in dire straits of putting fire in our areas that need it, especially in town. And so the ability to teach non-natives to be comfortable with fire within their urban settings has to start with the words micro burning, okay? And so we're going to look at this floodplain is not burned. And we got this area right here. A lot of people see this do land management, lots of thick blackberries, some naughty stuff going on there, real thick. It's a ladder fuel. You want to kind of go in there, but you know, this is what it looks like when it's unmanaged and just, you really can't get in there without fire and pulling out. And this is an area that has been managed. And then I did some micro burning in there. So if you can see all the burning I did, nope, you can't. That's what micro burning is about. It's kind of a sneaky. So you're not really showing everybody everything. You're not doing like what I did earlier where you can see the black scorched earth or any of that, basically, which is you need that for the carbon sequestration. But long story short, it's there, but I'm doing small micro, it's just small pocket burns and it's very clean. It looks really nice. Right, this way. Okay, and so this is also me and a community members in this area in Verbena Fields doing beaver biomimicry. So we basically cut these down. We just cut them down at the base all along this channel, and then we kind of throw this, and we kind of leave the stems up a little taller than we usually will, because we're trying to get as much silt when the floods come in to stay up here on this area. So beavers do the same thing. I want, you know, if you watch what beavers do in their area. So I basically copycat them or beaver cat them, and whatever the called is, but I copy them and I learn a lot. And so these are also some of the stuff when we cut a lot of willow, we can make a lot of these willow piles everywhere. But since we don't really burn out there yet, we're learning to make these willow walls with the biomass. And this helps retain some of the areas as we're building a creek and expanding the flood zone over there. And as a community, those are the community folks out there. So these are just basically community projects I have, but locally we do have Mechoopda crews that are getting certified through TEK, because I really found out that the certification and knowledge that the tribe has on land management belongs with the tribe. And so patenting that knowledge and keeping it local, and so that it doesn't get discovered or incorporated into federal and state agencies without its due acknowledgement of where it comes from, is really important. So that's my mission, is kind of teach locally everybody that's in our territory, and to expand that knowledge and keep it first with some of the tribal members, and have them help me develop more and more curriculums as we expand out through the years. Excuse me. And as we do this, I hope to manage more and more of our tribal property, because and territory, because he who manages the land has rights to the land. So we have about 180,000 acres of federal forestry, federal land in our county. So I have a goal to manage all 180 acres of federal land in our tribal territory.